Hello and welcome to this webinar on the dieting cycle. This webinar forms part of a group of webinars which have been put together by dietitians across Somerset. They are designed to be watched together, although not necessarily all at once. My name is Alice Murray-Gawley and I will be talking through this webinar, which will help you to understand how your body responds to dieting and therefore why we don't routinely recommend diets. There may be some circumstances where you have been encouraged to follow a certain diet for a medical reason. We'd therefore recommend that you speak with your health professional about this further. Within this webinar, I will cover why dieting can be so difficult to maintain and why the body is so frustrating at regaining weight after a diet has ended. We know that diets are easier at the start and become much more difficult as time goes on, and this can create something called the dieting cycle, which we will explore further. After watching this webinar, I'd recommend that you listen to the next webinar in the series on regular eating. This explains how you can work to break the dieting cycle through a regular eating pattern. So to start with, I'd like you to have a think about what causes you to start a diet. Whether you choose to attend group dieting classes, you might follow guidance online, you may even design a diet of your own from reading and research. All diets claim to unlock the long-lost secrets needed for significant weight loss. So have a think about what triggers you to start a diet. Once you've embarked on a diet, how does this feel? Think about those first few days of a diet and what thoughts crop up. Consider pausing the video here just to allow yourself some time to think about this. When a diet is started, it can often be exciting for people. We know in the first few days there is a sense of positivity that you have successfully started something new and that it's going well. This sense of positivity is increased by the release of adrenaline that occurs when we restrict food intake. We'll discuss why this happens more a bit later on. Dieting can also cause people annoyance at having to be so strict with their eating, especially when others around you may not have to worry about food or their weight in any way. So what about when you stop the diet? Again, consider pausing the video here to give you some time to think about how this feels. Some people find it can create a sense of freedom. It can cause fear about losing control over eating, or maybe even some disappointment that there are no longer any rules to follow. All these factors can make it easier to feel as though you're the one that has not been able to complete the diet. Hopefully this webinar will explain why it isn't you who has failed, but rather the diet that has failed you. Dieting can cause individuals to become stuck in something called the dieting cycle, which we mentioned earlier. This dieting cycle highlights the physical steps people go through when on a diet. So the first step is deciding to embark on a diet. This includes choosing the diet and then calculating what you can or can't have. Once the diet has started, step 2 will naturally occur, and therefore hunger will become more noticeable. This may not happen straight away, but because you're on a diet, you're likely to ignore this hunger when it does crop up. Eventually the hunger will increase and it turns into cravings. These are shown in step 3. Often these are cravings for high-calorie, high-sugar foods. At this point, you either continue to diet and you go back to step 1, or you choose to eat more than planned and go to step 4. If you choose to continue to diet, the cycle will continue and the cravings will continue to increase. Eventually, everyone eats more than the diet allows, and this is shown in step 4. Following this, it's common for people to return to dieting or to start another diet at a later date, and so as you can see, the cycle will simply continue. So why is dieting so difficult? Why does this cycle occur? And why won't our bodies allow us to diet to lose weight? Well, the reasons for this all stem back to our ancestors. The simple reason our body doesn't let us diet is because it's scared of losing weight. When we were cave people, we would often go for several days without food. Therefore, our bodies had to develop strategies to survive. As a result, when food is now reduced, our brains prompt us to feel hungrier. They increase our thoughts about food, so we are tempted to eat, and we are more likely to store the food we do eat as fat. These strategies meant our ancestors could survive several days without food, and we were able to carry on through evolution and become the humans we are today. However, these strategies are so ingrained that despite having access to so much food in the modern world, our brain still gets scared of any future starvation. I refer to this part of our brain as our caveman brain. So when we reduce our intake, there are 4 main things that the caveman brain does due to being scared of starvation. Firstly, adrenaline is released. This is to give us the energy we need to go out and hunt food. Because the caveman brain believes that we are not able to find food, the adrenaline allows us the extra energy to go out and find food, and our ancestors would have had to physically hunt for this food, so adrenaline would have been really useful back in the day. However, as the starvation is purposeful, what you might experience are feelings of elation or excitement, and this explains the feelings of happiness when a diet is initially started. Secondly, you might notice increased cravings for high-energy foods. The caveman brain wants to make sure that you're only hunting for high-calorie foods. Fruit and salad wouldn't be considered energy-dense enough to prevent starvation. Therefore, you'll notice cravings for sugars, chocolates, carbohydrates, anything that contains a large amount of energy. Thirdly, the body will try to preserve stores of energy. This might be where you see a weight plateau. This is the body slowing down fat burning as it wants to preserve this for the next few days in case you don't find food. Again, the caveman brain sees this as doing you a favour and helping you to survive for a longer period without food. Finally, when you do find food, the brain will switch off feelings of fullness to allow you to overeat. This essentially allows the body to stock up and prevents another period of starvation. This stocking up process also converts more of the energy to fat than it did before. Again, this is the body trying to ensure that there are stores in case of future starvation. When you compare the caveman brain to the dieting cycle, it's easy to see the similarities and why the body perceives dieting as starvation. The principles are the same. Interestingly, from a starvation study carried out in the 1950s, they found that many of these mechanisms to hunt and preserve food can start when our calorie intake is as high as 1,500 calories a day. This is more than most diets in our modern world and explains why diets so often don't work for people. You're essentially fighting your body's natural responses. Not only that, but after dieting, the body will store a higher proportion of fat when weight is regained. So what this means is you end up with a higher fat percentage than you did before you started the diet. We know that fat burns less energy than muscle, which then makes future dieting much more challenging because your body is much less efficient at burning through calories or energy. Hopefully this might explain why you struggle to lose weight despite following exactly the same dieting principles as you did previously. It's therefore really important to work with rather than against your body. Your willpower is not to blame, your evolution is the real problem and you can't do anything about that. So how do you manage this when it's naturally part of who you are? This is where the importance of regular eating comes in. Regular eating is essential for maintaining stable blood sugar levels, which in turn helps with managing the caveman brain. The webinar on regular eating will explain this in more detail and guide you through the principles of how to manage your caveman brain to help you to lose weight. Thank you so much for listening. I hope it's been useful.